Dr. Muda Yusuf, as I was saying, it's a record budget, 20.5 trillion. But experts, have not been the warmest in, receiving it in terms of their critique. It's based on revenue should be hitting 16.87 trillion. 1.69 million barrels per day of crude. And there are people who have said that these are way too optimistic. But as I said, we have experts in the studio. What are your impressions, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much, Uncle Yori. Well, the budget is there's nothing really to cheer about the budget, particularly from the point of view of the capacity to fund it. First of all, let me say that the budget, particularly the expenditure, is not as big as it looks.
Okay.
Because we have a budget proposal of 20.51 trillion. We have a debt service payment of 6.3. So if you are talking about expenditure, by the time you take the 6.3 trillion, because the 6.3 is part of the 20.5, by the time you take it out of the 20.5, you are left with just about 14 trillion. So the amount that is actually available for proper spending in terms of capital or recurrent expenditure, that is non-debt, is actually about 14 trillion because you have a debt service of 6.3 trillion. And the thing about debt service is that it is first line charge. What that means is that whatever revenue comes in, one of the first obligations that you sort out is your debt. That is one. Secondly, even the revenue, from the track record of revenue performance in the last few years, the best we have had is around maybe 60% of target. Now, so if you are talking about a revenue of 9.73, that's retained revenue to the federal government is 9.73. You'll be lucky if you're able to meet 70% of that. So even if you meet 70% of that, that means that the deficit that we have been told exists in this budget, which is 10.78 trillion, will be far more than that. The long and short of this is that this budget is going to be funded almost entirely from borrowing. There's a borrowing proposal of 8.8 trillion new borrowings. We already have a debt profile of almost 43 trillion. So by the time you add this 8.8 to it, you'll be talking of a debt profile of about 50 trillion. And don't forget that the CBN, the government is also heavily indebted to the CBN. Because the CBN has been filling a lot of financing gaps for government, completely even outside the provisions of the CBN Act. This is also getting close to 20 trillion. By the time you add that to it, you are talking of close to 70 trillion debt. So what we are looking at is a legacy of very huge financial burden, both for the people and for the incoming administration.
Okay.